So anyway, I'm Kathy Cryan Hicks, and I used to work at the library. um, and I think maybe we have a little too many people to go through and do all the introductions. What do you think, Vern? Should we try to do that, or no? I'm getting a no from some folks. Yeah, if you write your name in the chat, people could look in and see who's here. Or actually, you just have to click on participants too. But I see Jillian is here, and she actually has 2 blocks. So I think she's going to do something magical with her Zoom account that I won't understand. So, and in case anyone does have to leave early, I thought we would have our conversation with Jillian first. And then if somebody does have to leave, they won't miss all the great information that she's about to give us, because when we look at the Natick website, we've all been pretty dazzled by everything that Jillian has accomplished in her time there. And plus her background. I'm going to tell you a little bit about Jillian. I know she is working on a project, and we're all very anxious to hear more about it. It is taking an inventory of the greenhouse gases in Natick, and they're going to have a reference point so that they can try to get to net zero and help the state of Massachusetts do our part. She's led the town of Natick's climate change mitigation and adaptation efforts. They've been able to green their electricity aggregation program, which is another thing we're trying to do in Chelmsford. She's implemented more than $1 million in energy conservation measures, installed nearly 2 megawatts of municipal solar, expanded the curbside recycling services. I think I remember seeing something about a compost program there, and you may get questions about that. The background that Jillian has is pretty amazing. She's worked as a sustainability consultant advising Hilton Worldwide, the Walt Disney Company, Johnson & Johnson, and CVS on how to improve and communicate their sustainability efforts of performance. So she just seemed like the perfect one to come and help us get started here in Chelmsford. We've had the climate action team for about, not even 8 or 9 months now, and we're just still getting our toes on the ground. And so just before I let I start talking with Jillian, I wanted to make sure I've done everything I have to do here as the host, because I'm not good at this. Any questions or comments from anybody? I think we all need to help me today, host.
Excuse me, are you having it recorded?
I think Jessica has on record, yes. And is that okay with you, Jillian?
Okay.
Because we don't want to miss anything. We're going to be listening and forget to take notes, so I'm afraid of. So she says, okay, I got a thumbs up.
That's fine with me. I'm at my office, and so my window is open beside me, and you might hear some DPW noises in the background.
Well, Melissa will still write it home. Melissa Joyce is from our DPW department. So if she's not at the office, she'll feel like she is. Okay. So Jillian, if you could give us a little bit of background on what you and your staff or volunteers have been doing in Natick, I think that would really be helpful. We have some folks from Westford here too. So you're helping a couple of towns, by the way. So
great. Yeah, well, it's so lovely to see such a engaged group of volunteers, and I'm sorry, I'm kind of like looking up at my screen versus my phone is down here. So I am looking at you, but feels like I'm looking around. I'm happy to talk about whatever you want to talk about. I have a couple of presentations that I've used for town presentations here locally that I could share with you that kind of give an overview of what I work on, and also go into the inventory work that we've been doing. But let me know if you would rather just have this be a Q&A or have me kind of just talk at you for a little bit and then let you ask questions.
Well, if you already have a presentation ready that will talk about some of those things we discussed in the emails, feel free to do that if you want to do that, and then we'll have questions after. Okay, is that gonna?
Yeah, that works great. Let me try sharing my screen and seeing if I can make this work. Okay, I think I can. So you guys can see that because I can see it. Cool. All right, so these are just some slides that I share. In Natick, we have something called the Citizen Leadership Academy, and it's something that we offer to residents, and they participate in a series of presentations by essentially every department head in Natick, and we walk through like what we do and why it matters. And I find it really a great experience because often residents don't know what I do, but I also I've learned a lot by just sitting in on other departments' presentations, and I think it's a great way to just get people to appreciate some of the work that local government supports. So really what I focus on is kind of two things, and it sounds like you guys are working on both of these, and I know Chelmsford is active in both of these arenas already, which is reducing our contribution to climate change and then also preparing for climate change. And the kind of core programs or initiatives that I have going for each of those is our net zero work, which includes a lot of different projects, and from energy efficiency to solar to battery storage and more. And then our resiliency work, which is around mostly our MVP program, which I know Chelmsford is an MVP community. MVP is the Municipal Vulnerability Preparedness Program, if you aren't familiar with it. And you have every community who's part of it has a list of priority actions that they're working towards based on assessments around how climate change will impact their community directly. So in my role, I find myself working with kind of 4 different kind of categories of constituents or partners. The yellow on the top is the residents and the people who live and work in Natick, and each is kind of by size, right? So I find right now that I'm engaged more with residents than I am with business. So I think I would like to increase how much I work with businesses. In the internal municipal departments, I work a lot with our facilities department, which makes a lot of sense since I'm working on, retrofitting buildings or adding solar to buildings. That's their job. The building department is actually more of our inspectional department. So I do work with them as well in terms of them and our community and economic development department around what kind of zoning and standards are appropriate for new buildings and stormwater and things like that. And then our schools, Natick Public Schools, MPF, they are the owners of the majority of our buildings in terms of facilities. So those are big partners. The upper right is the purple, and we do have a sustainability committee here in Natick. It is a 7-member committee, and they have been active since I think 2016. It could be 2017, but there used to be a recycling committee, and that kind of sunset and turned into the sustainability committee with totally new people. Actually, the people on the recycling committee were they had served for many years and they were a little bit tired. So a new group of leaders emerged, and we had the sustainability committee. And that group, we also have an associate member in that group who is a non-voting member and works on community outreach. And that committee has helped champion efforts related to, for example, we have a non-binding resolution in Natick to become net zero by 2050 in regards to greenhouse gas emissions. And the sustainability committee helped champion that kind of as a liaison with a local grassroots kind of more advocacy group that I don't have listed here, but I should, and they're called Renewable Natick. And then I do work with these other boards and committees often because, for example, the select board, they have to approve any contract that I need signed for getting an energy efficiency project done, but they also make decisions about the renewable energy content in our aggregation program. Our planning board, they vet any zoning related article before it goes to town meeting and things like that. And then from the bottom green stars, those are kind of often more funding partners than anything else. So as a green community, we receive funding from DOER on a regular basis. We also receive grants from DEP from their Sustainable Materials Recovery Program and their Recycling Dividends Program. The EEA is really the MVP kind of coordinators. And then there's other grant programs out there that we have participated in. So for me, I report directly to the town administrator in Natick. And when I say that I report directly to her, it doesn't mean that I actually engage with her on a very regular basis, but I don't sit in a different department. So I'm kind of this, I sometimes think of myself as like the stepchild of Natick because I don't have a necessary home in the town in terms of I'm not a director, but I in a way am managing my own division of the town. And I do work a lot with our deputy town administrator of operations. And then I work with all the department directors on integrating sustainability and climate resiliency into their operations. And sometimes I'm successful at that and sometimes I'm not. I've had a lot of wins, but you don't hear in like the intros about people about all the losses that they've had. And so that definitely happens too. It's not always, easy going to get people to agree to these kinds of projects. I spend most of my time still working on energy efficiency. More and more, I'm starting to work on projects that extend beyond the municipal footprint. Now that we have that non-binding resolution and we're working on that inventory, I am doing things that are more community-wide. And I'm starting to beef up my work around resiliency, though the funding for that is a little more difficult to come by. And this is a slide that is usually helpful for me when encountering people who question the value of the position. And here you can see the net positive results that the position has been able to deliver. And this is only reflecting my time in the position since 2015. Ahead of me, Natick had an environmental compliance officer that had actually established the position after being fined because of a lot of different environmental compliance problems. And when that person retired, this position was created. And anyway, on this chart, you can see that the revenue from my projects, which are the positive numbers, far exceed the cost of my position, which includes both my salary, but also I've included the cost of what the capital investments are that we make in our energy efficiency projects above and beyond what the grants that we get support. So I have a few favorite projects. I think I'll just skip through to a couple that I think maybe are most interesting to you. We have solar on as on many buildings as we can in Natick. So we have 8 schools and we have solar on, I believe, 6 of the 8 schools. And we're at our new middle school. We're actually adding battery storage to the solar system that we're building or constructing there. So it's a new middle school and we're putting rooftop solar and solar canopy parking solar in the parking lot. And we're pairing that with a battery. The system is behind the meter. And I think it's really interesting because here you can see the benefit of adding the battery. So basically the battery will be powered by the solar panels. And when the building is using its peak amount of electricity on kind of a daily basis, it's called their demand. The battery will discharge that clean electricity that is stored from the solar panels and will help reduce the building's demand from the grid and power it with clean power. And that will help us reduce our demand charges substantially such that we're able to save, I think it's over $300,000 more over the 20-year life of the project. So that's kind of exciting. And you can see here on this slide that the yellow is the blue is the building's energy usage, the dark blue is it without any solar or battery, and then the light blue is with the solar and the battery. The green is the solar and the yellow is the battery. So you can see, for example, in January, the demand before we have solar and the battery is around like 280 or something like that. And then the battery is able to discharge electricity. That's when it's kind of like pointing up the yellow curve and able to reduce the demand down. So we're able to save money. You can see how it changes in different months. We do have a curbside composting program. So that program started through an in-house pilot by the DPW where they collected using a small truck that they have compost from, capped it at 500 households. And it was a successful pilot. We had lots of residents calling on a weekly basis asking to participate, and we didn't have space, and the DPW didn't really have the capacity to extend that service to more people or expand the program. So we ended the DPW pilot, and we had a volunteer group that looked into what other companies might be able to take over and privatize that program. And so now in Natick, about 900 people or households contract with a company called Black Earth Compost, and they provide weekly collection for about $2 a week, and it's on their trash day. So it's nice because it's coordinated with the town's efforts, so it's easy to remember. Some of the resiliency stuff that I've worked on are related to heat islands. That was identified as a problem in Natick, and here, this is a map that shows you it's color coded by the surface temperature, and this is Natick Center. And so the dark red is where it's hotter, and the little green dots are places where we identified opportunities to plant street trees, or trees that are within, I think, 15 feet of the street. So we did outreach to property owners whose properties would have benefited from a public tree, and tried to increase the adoption of street trees through that program to increase cooling of surface temperatures. Another project that we worked on related to resiliency, this was partially funded by the MVP program. Natick received funding to review our stormwater bylaw. And what we found was, one, it was great that we had a stormwater bylaw, but actually our stormwater bylaw really only regulated properties that were 40,000 square feet, or if that involved the clearing of 40,000 square feet or almost an acre. And most parcels in Natick are substantially below an acre in size in Natick. So we realized that it wasn't really regulating very much, except for very, very large developments like the mall and things like that. And at the same time, every water body in Natick is impaired. So we updated our stormwater bylaw, and now we have two thresholds. We have two different kinds of permits: a minor permit, which is triggered by the clearing or land disturbance of 3,000 square feet or more, and then a major permit, which is triggered by 20,000 square feet or more. And that's was adopted at town meeting last year. And then our net zero work. So our sustainability committee helps me a lot with this work, and they're really great about doing public outreach. This is them in front of the library at Natick Days last year, I think is when it was. And we were calling for net zero heroes to join us and fight. Dr. Smog is who that person is. My daughter thinks he looks like a chicken, but he was supposed to be Dr. Smog. And that kind of dovetails into what I wanted to talk to you about a little bit more, which was our net zero efforts. So let me see if I can show you that. So can you guys see my screen still? Yeah, I think you can. Okay. So yeah, you can. Good. So our greenhouse gas and net zero efforts really are, we're learning a lot through them, and they're very much in process. We are nowhere near achieving net zero, and we have a lot of work to do, but we've learned a lot along the way. So recently we completed our first greenhouse gas inventory, and we use this tool that I'll try to just share this with you. I know we've talked about it with Melissa before, and I think maybe this group, but this is, sorry, you can hear the DPW. This is the tool that MAPC, myself from Natick, and sustainability folks in Arlington and Melrose helped develop. And it's really a tool that lets communities, any community, you don't have to be an MAPC community. MAPC is the regional planning council that Natick is a part of. They created this tool, and if you put all the inputs in and they give you guidance on how to do it, then it spits out your emissions, and you can see, you can learn like where your emissions come from, what the sources are by sector, and things like that. And let me see if I can share this right thing again. Okay. All right. So with that, we were able to come up with some interesting findings around our first inventory. So let me just show you this. As I mentioned, we have this town meeting resolution. It's a non-binding resolution, and I really emphasize that because it doesn't really carry a lot of weight unless the town has people who are actively pushing to work on achieving this goal. But in our resolution, we required, again, non-binding, but the town was asked to establish a baseline of community-wide emissions, which that tool helped us do, and develop an action plan, which we're working on right now, and provide annual progress reports to town meeting. And this was passed in 2018 in the fall, and we have yet to provide an annual progress report to town meeting. Last year, we didn't really have a progress report because we hadn't finished with the baseline. And then this year, COVID happened, so we haven't been able to deliver a report yet. And what it tracks in terms of the baseline inventory is our emissions that originate in Natick. And I think that's really interesting to understand because a lot of people think about emissions in terms of the full supply chain. And for example, like the iPhone that you have, the emissions that are associated with its production, those happen in a different place besides Natick, right? Or Chelmsford. And so they're not included in our inventory, and our inventory and the tool that is available for free is, it follows the global reporting protocol, and it is just what it is, you know? So basically those emissions are accounted for in another community's inventory when you're following that protocol. So these are some of the things that are in each of those categories. This lists some of the data that we actually got that you put into the like mega spectrometer Excel spreadsheet, and it pops out your emissions. And this is what we found, is that most of our emissions come from stationary energy, which is primarily buildings, but we also have a lot from transportation. And you can see the emissions by source here. So gasoline from transportation is the biggest contributor to our emissions. And then natural gas, fuel oil, and electricity, primarily from buildings, are really big contributors. And it's interesting because one of the strategies that we are using to push towards net zero is moving towards a 100% renewable aggregation. And that right now, if everyone participated in it, would only cover 20% of our emissions. So it's just something to think about, how you really need to be looking at all of your emission sources. And then I think this is also really important to think about, is like where the emissions are coming from. So 63% of our emissions are coming from residents. Only 2% is coming from the municipality, which is why I think it's so important for me not to only be working on what happens in Natick's, in our town buildings. And also when you think about it coming from residents aren't going to be, you know, building new homes or replacing existing homes with like LEED certified homes anytime soon, right? So we need to find ways to support residents in switching to clean energy technology in their homes and with their vehicles, and how we're still trying to figure that out. And that is it. I'll stop just droning on and answer any questions that you guys have.
Wow, that's a lot. Oh my goodness, I have a lot of questions. And I feel like each one of the things you covered, it would be a program in itself. I'm going to just open up to everybody. I want to go back to this grid gallery view. That's what I want. Does anybody have something they want to just say right now, or a question to ask Jillian? Julie?
Yeah, hi. I just have a question on the last slide. You said 63% of emissions come from residents. Did that include, I wasn't sure if you meant, did that include their vehicles as well as their homes, or just their homes?
Yes, it did. Most of our vehicles were from residents. So in that tool from MAPC, you're able to segment commercial and residential vehicles, and that data all comes from the vehicle census that the state does. Like when you register your car, every year they see what your mileage is, and so that's how they're able to measure emissions. And they also know what kind of fuel efficiency rating your car has and things like that.
Mm-hmm. Jillian, I have a question. Is your presentation, or is the information that you talked about on one of your websites in Natick, so that we could go back?
Yeah, the greenhouse gas inventory one is. I need to actually update it on the website because we realized we were double counting municipal emissions, so I have to fix it. But I don't think the other slides are, but I can make them available.
Yeah, okay. Well, plus if we're recording this, I'm assuming we're going to get the video also, but not sure about that. And I do remember seeing something when I Googled you a long time ago. I remember seeing something on there on the inventory, and I don't know how recent it was, but I imagine we can go in there and find it.
The inventory uses 2017 data, and it's just because that's the latest data that was available from Mass Save and the different data sources that we had. So unfortunately, they don't do a great job of keeping their data very current. Mm-hmm. And then also the data that is for the vehicle census, that is from 2014, and that hopefully will be more current soon. There are some challenges there, but it's not easy figuring these things out.
No, it looks pretty complex, and I feel like I need to look at a couple of those slides for much longer time to kind of wrap my head around them.
I have another question. Sorry. So how difficult was it to use that inventory? Easy, or what did that entail in terms of people and hours? Did you do that yourself, or did you have a group?
Yeah, I did it myself, and then a couple members of our one member of our sustainability committee also did it as a way of fact checking and making sure we were doing it correctly, because so much of it is you just going and getting the data for your community from the sources that are listed in it, and it gives you directions on how to do it. And so for me, I don't think I'm a good judge because I was part of building the tool, so I did it many times in different formats. But Sherborne, which is a neighbor of Natick, they just did it, and it took them about 8 hours to do it, or less, I think. So if you really just kind of like buckle down to work on it one day, I think it could probably get done.
Okay. I saw another hand. Is it Nyana? It's Susan. Okay.
Hi. This is really wonderful, and I'm wondering how many towns are at this point. Acton just got past the emergency climate action, and we've got a Green Acton and we've got a coalition, but I don't know if we have the benchmarking like this. And I'm just curious, how old is the tool, and how many towns do you think are using it or being able to do programs based on it?
So the tool is brand new, and well, brand new. It's new as of February, and I don't know how many communities have used it yet, but I know in my area that Ashland, Sherborne, Wayland, Westboro, and I think I'm blanking on a few others have used it all on their own without support from MAPC. So it's being used, and it's available on MAPC's website for free for any community in Massachusetts.
Okay, it's good to know. Yeah, did someone else have a question too? I don't want to miss everybody. I have trouble focusing on all these people. John has a question. Okay.
Yeah, I have a couple. One of your charts, the one on the heat islands, that was pretty sophisticated. Where did you get that? How do you get that data?
So for that is actually using, so MAPC, again, we were kind of lucky with this, but I'll tell you this other kind of cool project in a second that will support it. But MAPC had, I think in 2010 or something like that, they had gotten aerial data that got heat surface, land surface temperature for all of them, their service area, which is the 101 cities and towns around Boston. And we got that GIS data and included it in our analysis. But I'm actually working on this really cool project this fall with NASA, which is like, I think really cool. And they're gonna provide us with an update of that using the NASA like satellite sensors, which is pretty cool.
Wow.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of cool. Anyway.
Yeah.
So it looks like when you say 63% is from residents, so that's definitely the first thing to go after, the biggest bang for the buck. And I think you mentioned things like insulation, energy efficiency of homes. And so I just wanted to mention that right now, until the end of the month, Mass Save is offering a program for 100% off on insulation. So if anybody has an old house that may not be totally insulated, get in touch with me and I can send you the contact information. A guy named Jake Keller, who's with Home Energy. That company does the work. But Mass Save will come out, we'll do an energy audit. And actually, everyone probably has had that or should have that, of course. And it will tell you if you don't have fully insulated house. And then at this point, if you could get in on it at 100% savings, absolutely, it's a pretty good deal. So,
Yeah.
and I'm not getting paid to do this.
No.
Plug it.
I guess I have so many questions. I kind of wanted to go back to learn a little bit more about your committee. I think you said it was a 7-member committee. Are these volunteers, staff, or are there any students involved in working with you?
So our committee is all volunteers. There's no staff on it except for me, but I'm not even technically on the committee. I just go to the meetings and have no voting power. But our committee in many ways is kind of more of an advisory committee is how they've acted so far as a committee. So they haven't necessarily led many initiatives on their own. I know that many other sustainability or energy related committees in other towns have done more of the actual like boots on the ground work of doing the projects. That hasn't happened as much in Natick. And then in terms of students, I do work with students. They're not on the committee. We're working on a project with some students at Babson, Olin, and Wellesley College, they have a joint sustainability certificate. So we're doing some stuff with them. And then I often am able to get like a free student intern every year. And then we have an environmental club at our high school that I meet with a few times a year. So I do some work with students.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah, that's one of the things we tried to do last year when we were not Chelmsford Climate Action Team at the time. We went as members of Elders Climate Action, and Byrne, and I think Tom, you were involved in that too, working with the students in the environmental club, ecology club, I think it was. But it's hard to do anything like that right now with COVID in the way. It's making life difficult in so many ways, really. Rebecca?
Yeah, the students for the Eco Club came to the last Chelmsford Recycling Committee meeting. So they are going to try to be active this next year because it's a group that can meet remotely. So, but they did lose Carol Brule, and so they're trying to figure out who their advisor will be. And, you know, they don't know, they might not be an official club, but they're still percolating along, and there's still some students that are interested in doing that.
Oh, that's good news. I didn't realize that was still happening. Maybe we can have them help us with that. It looks like it's an Excel sheet that you did the inventory on, Jillian. When
Yes.
I looked at it, yeah. Maybe we'll find some math whizzes as well. But yeah, it's a great project for some of the high school juniors and seniors.
So Melissa, would that be something that you'd be interested in having the Eco Club look at? We could make the suggestion. We don't tell them what to do. We sort of go, oh, you might be interested in doing this. And they're a pretty dedicated group of kids. So maybe, but you know, life's complicated right now. But
So actually, Paul has given me the go-ahead to work with Chelmsford Climate Action to do that inventory. Just needs to be prioritized.
Yeah.
I think it's probably not a great project for students, I would just offer, because you do need to kind of have a good sense of, you need to be able to ask certain departments for data, and then it's really not a math exercise, it's more of a data gathering exercise. So you want to make sure you're really getting the right data.
well, it might be useful exercise just for them, and then it would be kind of a double check type thing to see how close they came up, you know, sort of like what you did. And then it would be good for the students. But that's great. Paul gave you the go ahead to do that, Melissa. I think that's awesome.
Yeah. Is it Niana? Is that your first name?
Yeah, I made it up. I made it up, so it's Niana. I belong to a group called Jewish Climate Action Network, and they use a tool similar to this. It's for churches and temples. I'm not sure if the churches did it, but then you can find out where you, it's the same kind of tool. And then they have benchmark tags of what people can get to and what levels, and it's really, really helpful. So, and it might be an easier tool for students to use, because I don't think it was quite this thorough. It was just like it was the building tool, I think.
Do you remember where that tool came from, where it originates?
I know who had it. Fred Davis has, I can put you in contact with the person who has it.
That would be a good resource to offer to the churches and places of worship in Chelmsford.
I'll put in the Jewish Climate Action Network.org, and then you can ask Fred Davis about, I'll put the info in
the chat. Okay.
Yeah.
Oh,
the students maybe could do that for Chelmsford High School. That would be maybe an easier task and on the same idea.
Yeah, that would be awesome. Okay. Just trying to see if anyone else has their hand raised. Swing it around if you have a question. Barbara.
Yes, I wrote this in the chat, but I see that, Jillian, you've done something about the town's electricity aggregation program. Can you tell us what you've done, what that program is like now in Natick?
Yeah. So, do you guys have an aggregation? You have an aggregation there, right?
Yeah, in Westford we do.
In Chelmsford.
Yes, I can show you. I got lost on my screen for a second. Well, I had some slides to show you, but I can't show them to you. What we've done in Natick is we started our aggregation program the 2 weeks after I started. The DPU had already approved the aggregation program when I started in November 2014, and in January of 2015 our first contract was in effect. And we started that without having any additional renewable energy content or any, I think, vision for renewable energy at that point. And I hadn't been part of leading up to it. So I wasn't even aware that that was really an option. And as you read, in terms of my bio, I have zero municipal background experience before this job. So I've learned a lot. And so in 2017, we were procuring a new supplier for that contract. And I said to my boss, I said, I don't really know why I'm working on this project because it doesn't do anything for sustainability. But I know that other communities are requiring additional renewable energy content. And so we brought it to the Board of Selectmen, and they voted to approve adding 5% renewable energy content as a requirement above what the state requires to our aggregation program. And so that was great. So we did that for a few years. And then after our non-binding resolution passed in fall 2018, our procurement was coming up again for the aggregation. And we said, it seems like we should be doing more to this because we have this goal, and this is one way that we can start working towards achieving that goal. And even though I mentioned that electricity is only 20% of Natick's emissions right now, the idea of pretty much every net zero plan that I read that's out there is that we need to transition our heating and transportation systems to be electric. So someday emissions would be 100% from electricity. And the idea is to make those electricity emissions be net zero. And the way you do that is by sourcing them from renewable energy, right? So in 2019, we switched to 10% renewable content as an additional requirement for the default product. And then just a few weeks ago, we signed a new contract for our program. It becomes effective December of this year, and that will be for 13%, and then the following year it'll be for 16%. And I wish I could show you these slides. Maybe I could. We are on a track to achieve 100% if we follow that pattern by 2030, based on what Natick is doing and based on what the state is doing. So that is our objective.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you very much. Well, let me ask you this. How do you promote and educate the citizens, the residents of Natick, that you're increasing that renewable? Is there a big cost change for them?
So this time we were fortunate in that the market, the price of electricity had fallen since our prior contract. However, at the same time, the price of renewable energy certificates, those went up. So our contract, I'm going to get the numbers wrong a little bit, but I think it's just something like 0.2 cents more to add that additional renewable energy content, that 3%. And in Natick, in this new contract, when you're at 13% and then 16%, and that's a little bit complicated, but basically like it's a 2-year contract. So over the 2 years, we're actually at like 14.5%, but we're communicating in as step increases. So for that 14.5%, residents, the average household will pay about $3 a month for that additional renewable energy content based on the average residential usage.
Mm-hmm.
And so your question about communication. So it's interesting. I have found that we also offer a 100% option, and I think we have about 100 people who are in that option, and they choose to opt up and get 100% of their electricity from clean energy. And, you know, I live in Natick and I'm one of those people, but there's not a lot of us out there based on all the other customers. And it's, for us, I've found it really difficult to get people to take any action on their electricity supplier. At one point in the first contract cycle that I had kind of just stepped into when I started, Natick customers lost money during that contract cycle because Natick had procured at the peak of the electricity market, and then since then the price of electricity has fallen quite a bit. And we actually worked to communicate to residents to leave the program because there's no penalty to the town if you leave. And we put it in like the town's newsletter that goes out with your tax bill. We put it in the selectmen's meetings. I was in the paper talking about it, and people didn't do anything. So
are you talking about a penalty if they leave the program? Did you say
no?
that?
There's no penalty if you leave the program, but people were paying more to be part of the aggregation than they would have to just use basic service. And there was no additional renewable energy content. So there was really like essentially no value that the aggregation was providing. So my point of that long story is that people don't typically take action on their electricity bill in a substantial way from what I've seen. It's difficult to make progress there.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, we're hoping to do an opt-up campaign, and Tom and Bern know a lot more about this than I do. Did you guys have any questions for her on that? I think we're doing.
Not really a question on that. That sounds. I mean, it sounds good. I had a question on residential footprint. What is the biggest contributor? Is it if residents went to solar, electric vehicles, heat pumps? Do you have any ideas, from your experience, what would be the biggest decrease in their footprint? How,
for buildings, you mean, or for
for residents?
Yeah. So I mean, of that 63%, if I'm doing my math right, because I can't pull up the slides on my computer for some reason right now, I think about 30% of that is from transportation. And so Natick residents, if they were to work from home a couple days a week, which now everyone's used to doing, or use public transit, which people maybe might not be doing in the future, that would make a really big difference. And the other thing is in Natick, we still have a lot of homes that have oil heat. So if we were able to convert those homes to heat pumps, then I'm really hopeful that that could be kind of core to our strategy around net zero. So right now we have 25 actions that we've identified that we want to pursue over the next 5 years as it relates to achieving net zero. And one of the high priority actions on that list is trying to inject ourselves in the residential decision-making process when residents need to get a new water heater, need to upgrade their heating system. So they are considering these things and know about the available incentives and things like that. So that's, and that we would provide something kind of similar to Solarize, whether it be Heat Smart or something that's kind of more comprehensive. We're working that out.
Good.
Rebecca, I see your hand up.
Yeah, I just had a question because you said you hadn't done a lot with businesses yet. Because while businesses are a smaller percent, I suspect they might be a per unit larger percent because there's a lot of houses that are contributing to the 63% impact and probably not quite as many businesses. So getting a business involved might be, you know, a big, you know, they have like a bigger building. And so if you got the building, you know, got them to buy in. I was curious because my son works in Natick and, you know, so I was not.
Where does he work?
He works at the MathWorks.
Oh yeah. So that's great. MathWorks is like our biggest employer here. And so we are working on businesses, and I shouldn't have, if I said I hadn't worked with businesses, that wasn't what I meant to say. So I don't have as strong of a I don't have as deep relationships, and I don't work as frequently with businesses as I'd like to. So MathWorks, for example, their facilities director participated in our municipal vulnerability preparedness community workshops. And we did a program with Mass Save called their Main Streets program, where we supported energy efficiency, kind of like what Tom was talking about with insulation and a lot of lighting outfits for small businesses. And I think we did 100 of them, maybe 150 in Natick. And in terms of our net zero action plans, the other couple of high priority actions that are in the buildings category really relate almost directly to businesses. So we are planning on asking businesses to, we would like to adopt what's called a building energy reporting disclosure program, where building owners of buildings that are larger than a certain number of square feet, like MathWorks, for example, would be required to report their energy usage every year and to demonstrate that they're taking action to reduce it. These are ordinances that other communities have implemented successfully. And then we're also looking at zoning changes that would require new buildings that are subject to a special permit, which are typically large buildings in Natick. Those are most of the buildings on Route 9, requiring them to be on this path to be zero emissions by 2050. So over time, requiring any new construction, large construction, to be net zero.
Any other questions here? I just wanted to mention this. When you first started talking, you talked about the town's can't say the word, sustainability Citizens Leadership Academy. That sounds really interesting. I know that's not something that was on our agenda, but I might look into that. I just think that's really kind of interesting because I don't know, I think in Chelmsford, when you get on a committee or something like that, I'm not sure that you have a lot of training. Melissa's laughing, isn't it? Where did you go? I wasn't sure.
Don't laugh at us, Melissa.
What was that?
I'm on the recycling committee in Chelmsford, so I was saying, don't laugh at our lack of training.
Yeah, because I don't remember ever getting any training except if there was somebody on the board that was there before you got there. They, you know, they were a resource, but I don't remember anything, you know.
Yeah, our institutional memory has holes in it. Let's just say that.
Yeah, yeah, I think that's a great idea. I have to congratulate Natick for coming up with that concept. The couple of other things that interest me, I don't want to take over here, but I like the idea of your newsletters, Jillian. How often do you try to get those out, and how do you go about it? I don't think it was constant contact. I'm not sure what you used, but I just think that's a neat idea to pull people in and interest them.
Yeah, thanks. Well, the service I use is MailChimp, and I exceeded the free threshold. Sorry, that was hard to say. But the town actually uses MailChimp for some other things, so I'm able to just like use the larger account that we have. And I try to send them out every month. I did not send one out in August. Usually I miss a month in the summer. And I limit it to once a month. And I think that helps with people opening it. I used to send it every quarter, and that I had too much to say every quarter if I waited that long. I think I'm going to include Tom's thing about the 100% installation in my email. So I wrote that down. So that was a good reminder. And my email goes to, it's about 3,000 people. Not everyone lives in Natick. So like my mom gets it and my grandma, but it is primarily Natick residents. And I get about like a 50% open rate with my email, which I think is pretty good based on the metrics that are out there. And I don't know, like people really enjoy it. It's kind of lighthearted and goofy. And what inspires me is the projects that I'm working on. I try not to make it political. And I am usually just writing it here like by myself in the DPW. And sometimes it's a nice outlet to try to like even motivate myself, because it can, it can be like a downer when you're like, feel like you're alone working on things. So I just try to, the goal that I have for it is for it to be uplifting to people regarding climate and sustainability, and not just like a downer, because it's also easy to find those kinds of communications.
Right.
How did you develop your mailing list?
It started with when I was working on the compost pilot. Can you guys still?
What happened?
So I'll just pick up for Jillian just while she finds her way back here until she inserts herself again. So she's, and I know this because Jillian and I are actually friends. And I used to work in Natick at a private school as a facilities director. But so she started developing the list with the folks that were interested in the composting pilot, and then she built her people. So whenever she had any tabling event, she would gather email addresses, and Jillian's back so she can explain it better. But this is, I think you guys have heard me say, like, who are your people? We have to find your people. And whether it's, tabling at the farmer's market and collecting email addresses, or like Jillian is very involved with Natick days. So she has tables at the events, and you saw her superhero characters. Anytime she comes across those folks, she's collecting that information, email addresses. So like myself and even my DPW director receive Jillian's email now because we attended an event with her, and she got our email addresses. But they totally are uplifting, and they're fun and they're interesting. But you have to be reaching that audience, and that's one of the things that Jillian has done a terrific job in building. And definitely I've tried to relay that to you guys. And I think just judging by the amount of people who are on this call this afternoon, you are doing something right. So congratulations.
It goes up each time. Vern has
Jillian, I had a question about the conversion of the committee from the recycling committee to sustainability committee. I think you mentioned that. What drove that? Did you drive that, and how did it happen? How did you make arguments for that?
Well, it happened somewhat organically, in the sense that, as I mentioned, the recycling committee had almost been the same people for like 15 years. And there's two pieces of it. One, I think they were tired. They didn't really have many new initiatives that they were like really excited about. They just like kind of lost the passion for it. And I mean, they were still advocates for recycling, but they just weren't really like, they had other things they wanted to spend their time on. And then at the same time, so I had started attending their meetings, and they felt like I was doing the stuff that they would have been working on. And they also kind of recognized that there was more to what I was doing than just recycling. And they felt like there should be a body that worked on something bigger than recycling. So they were ready to kind of say goodbye, and they were part of the recommendation to the select board to transition their committee to this new charter and as a sustainability committee.
Did you find that they were, that committee helps you in your work?
The sustainability committee?
Yes.
Yeah, they do. I do think that they're very helpful. So for me, the role that they play that is especially helpful. They're not as technically supportive in terms of, we worked on our net zero action plan and the list of actions, and they're not the type, just by the nature of the volunteers in the group, they're not the ones saying, oh, we need to make sure that, you know, this clean energy financing program that the state has is on that, right? So that they're not like that deep into what is available or what kind of actions people should be taking, which I know is not true in other towns. Like in Arlington, I understand that their committee really is very explicit on like what kind of actions they want. My committee, I get a lot of value from them in that there's certain things as a town employee that you can't really just say to elected officials, right? Like I can't be the lone advocate for that non-binding resolution, for example. It's hard for a town employee to tell the town to do that. And they will go to meetings where I present a potential policy around the aggregation and adding clean energy, and they'll go there and they'll speak in support of it, or they'll speak in support of that resolution and other things like that. So that's where I have found them to be really valuable. And I found them to be really helpful with the community outreach stuff, because there's only so much time that you have for that as one person.
Thank you.
Diana has her hand up.
Yeah, I wanted to make a comment and ask about how to help it. I've observed that people from there's so much new science in sustainability, agriculture, or trees, whatever subject you look at, or energy. It's always very, very recent that the studies have come up. And I think it's hard to expect older people to be on top of it. For instance, this tool, people had to guess before. And so I think that unless you're coming out of school, and I've seen this in tree management and in agricultural too, everybody's more, things go through phases. So how are you educating people around this? Like, for instance, I don't understand the electricity, if it's renewable energy. I don't know how to tell whether electricity is renewable, is renewable energy or not. And it's just, no one's explained it to me, and it doesn't even make, it doesn't fit in my concept of electricity. So I'd have to learn a little bit. I'm wondering if you're seeing that with the residents. I used to live in Natick, and I loved working with the recycling people, but that was one topic, and now everything is interrelated, and it's just very different. It's not one topic anymore.
Yeah, I would say that it's hard for people who aren't seniors to stay on top of it all, right? And like, I think that being the sustainability coordinator for the town, it was interesting when I applied for the job, because I didn't necessarily have the background that they were looking for, which had a lot more to do with environmental science background. And I honestly think that the way the sustainability field is that it's so broad that you need to be a good project manager and a good advocate and a good communicator. And in Massachusetts, we're fortunate in that our state, for the most part, does a good job of creating programs that we just need to opt into, or there's great examples in our state, if not from the state, but from other communities, of like what our North Star should be. So in many ways in Natick, I don't have a budget really besides my salary. So I have to be scrappy, and I just copy what other communities are doing. So Cambridge and Somerville and Boston, I like try to just replicate what they're doing in Natick. And to your question about how do you communicate with people and help people understand things, it is challenging depending on the different person. I think, you know, you have to have a different strategy for different audiences. And with our aggregation program, I do a lot of, a couple times a year, I do a presentation at our senior center, where I explain the aggregation and I talk about clean energy in it and things like that. So I try to connect with people and answer their specific questions in a venue that they feel comfortable in and where their questions are probably shared by their peers.
Thank you.
Good idea because we can't do much at the senior center right now, but
yeah,
we have plans to get in there back before the pandemic started, and that was cut short. But in the future, we hope to get back in and at least show a film or start a discussion, something like that. I'm trying to think of how do you go about working with the churches? You had who brought up the was it Diane? And you had brought up the tool that you use in the churches. Do you have where did you go? You keep popping around, Jillian. There we go. Yeah, do you do any kind of outreach to churches? We have somebody on our committee who's made some big changes at his church that we're hoping to inspire other places in town like that.
Yeah, we have, so we have I'm blanking on First Congregational Church, FCC Church in Natick Center. You could have seen which property was theirs in that heat map. They are super involved and very passionate about sustainability. And so they have this coffee hour with speakers, and they have like a green team at their church. And I've presented to them at least 3 times, maybe 4. And I always get like free pizza out of it. And we had an interfaith group of different church and synagogue and other religious leaders who were all kind of interested in climate as well. So I've engaged with them that way.
I'm looking for hands. Anyone? I don't want to miss anybody with the hands up. No. And I have another question I want to ask, and that's, what about using Facebook? Are you finding that helpful?
So I have kind of a love-hate relationship with Facebook. So I live in Natick, and in Natick we have this group that's like somewhat notorious, called the Natick Moms group on Facebook. And I think there's like a moms group or a town group in a lot of different communities on Facebook. And we also have a group on Facebook called Natick Community and Government Chat or something like that. And so I get tagged a lot on people's questions in those groups. And so far I've been very responsive and like answering people's questions through Facebook, even though it's like usually people are tagging me, you know, at 10 a.m. on a Saturday because they have a question about what they can bring to the recycling center or something like that. Yeah. But you know, it's the reason I love it is because people are engaged and they know how to find me. They're interested. I don't often get too many like negative tags or conversations on Facebook. That does happen. But I also like it because I like being a local government employee who I think people usually can think of like often unfairly as being kind of, you know, like inefficient, and like, you know, people are always blaming local government on their problems. And I like being super responsive and people being able to like feel like people are actually like hard workers in local government kind of thing. But it is, you know, it is exhausting. And I also feel like I might be creating this culture of people not like just looking on the website to get an answer, you know? So I do also have a Facebook page for Sustainable Natick. but I have been really bad about keeping it current. So I wouldn't say that's like been a super useful tool for me, and it's mostly my fault because I haven't been keeping it updated.
Mhm. Okay. Yeah. I think that was it. Tom, you have a question?
Jillian, it's just really impressive what Natick has done. And, but we only have a few members on our team, you know, Chelmsford Climate Action, and I think we're almost all seniors. And so do you have any advice or recommendations, like what we could work on first, where we would begin? You know, because I mean, to do all of the things you've done, that's overwhelming. And-
Well, you've got Melissa.
well, we'll go after her.
I know. I think we kind of surprised
Right.
Melissa. She didn't know we were forming when we formed. We really didn't know who we should be forming with. And because I
Yeah.
worked at the library, for me that was a natural. But Tom became a member on the Energy Committee and met Melissa. And then it was like, oh yeah, she's the obvious one. So we kind
That's
of,
a good answer. We're gonna start prodding Melissa.
she kind
Well,
of
I mean,
forced to
Melissa's my
adopt
friend, so be kind to her. But I guess the other, I don't know if I have a great idea for you on where to start. I think for me, what's happened a lot is like seizing opportunities as they come up. And then I would say that I didn't expect this non-binding resolution to make as much of a difference in how I operate or how the town operates, but I think it actually has been pretty beneficial. Like, for example, today I was working on a capital request related to energy efficiency, and in the description I wrote how it aligns with the town's goal to become net zero by 2050. And I was like, oh, that's great that I can use that there, because it you know, shows that. And I'm asking town meeting for that money, right? And I'm saying, hey, town meeting, you said you supported this. This is what you need to do to actually like walk the walk that you're talking about. So I wouldn't underestimate the power of something like that. I think you would need to be strategic in how you did it. I know some communities, I don't know if you guys have done it, are talking about doing these like non-binding resolutions or like statements that they get their town meeting to sign on to around it being a climate emergency. I don't know if that makes sense in Natick, if that's the right if the climate in terms of politics is right for that here, but it's something to think about.
I don't think we have one in Chelmsford, do we? Chelmsford people?
Oh, no.
No.
Okay, that's kind of what I thought. Well, maybe that's something
Diane?
to look for.
Well, I like the idea of just going for a non-binding net zero resolution rather than going for climate emergency. I mean, it's like sounding like Chicken Little, and you know that's probably going to be very off-putting. You know, people will resist that, and the fact you've done so much without actually, you know, declaring a climate emergency. Getting to net zero is reasonable, rational, doable, and whereas saying this is an emergency sounds kind of Trumpian, you know, not to get political.
Yeah.
Diana has her hand up because she's from Acton. She can,
Acton.
I think you need to unmute yourself, Diana.
I'm unmuted. We just passed the climate emergency, and most of the town, only 10 people didn't vote for it. And we had a small video, but it is an emergency, and there is a climate emergency. And if we ignore it, then we're not going to get to net zero. So especially the young people in our town, they're saying the line about like when we don't have anything and we can't have any resources, what did you do? What did our parents do then? And what did our grandparents do then? So philosophically, there really is an emergency, and people have put 10 years, 12 years. I like that the newsletter is upscale, and there's a lot of ways of presenting climate in positive ways because it's action that we can take. And people we feel good taking action, but it is an emergency. And if it's put on as a priority, then it also covers covers prejudice and communities that don't have enough money to follow through. And it also does influence the laws and what's happening, because as new buildings are coming in, they have to have be electricity and not gas. And so it really does make a difference, but it has to be planned and gone by, it's not just all of a sudden that it's brought up, but it is an emergency. And if we don't see it that way, we're not going to be there for it. So,
Well, when you say you got almost everyone voted,
we had a town meeting Tuesday night. We had a town meeting outside. Some people were inside and some people are outside at the high school. They had a big screen and they took questions and debates, and there were a couple of issues that needed to be discussed. And the last issue was whether we were going to have this non-binding, considering it an emergency. I was so surprised, but everybody, except there were 10 people outside and maybe 5 or 6 people inside that said no. And everybody else was for it, right? Because especially with what's happening now with all the weather and all the changes, it's an emergency because we have to make lifestyle changes. But you need to have a good leader. And you can talk to the people, the Green Acton, what they did was the Acton Coalition, they got 30 organizations within town, like Mothers Out Front and the banks and the temples, and they all signed up that they wanted to get to net zero and help. And they had 30 different agencies, and they're calling it a coalition. So it was a big group effort. It wasn't just all of a sudden there's an emergency. And
So it wasn't because nobody came and was interested and didn't pay any attention, and you got it through why people weren't looking.
There were about we thought we had about 400 people there. So there was
okay, that's good.
390 people that voted yes. But also all these organizations were behind it because it wasn't, but it is an emergency. And if we don't see it that way, then it's not going to get, the articles aren't going to get voted. And it's
Hello?
It's anti-Trump because Trump wouldn't look at it.
Could I ask a question?
Is this Beth?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I can't put my hand up because I don't have my video on, but I just, I'm very interested in what you're talking about the resolution, because on October 17th here in Westford, we have a resolution going in front of town meeting, and we want the town to set up a committee, task force, we're calling it, to get to net zero emissions by 2050. And what I'm wondering about, from the experience of Natick and maybe also the experience of the climate emergency, what is, it looks like you didn't have a lot of resistance on the climate emergency, but I'm wondering about Natick's experience too. What can we expect from, what kind of resistance could we expect at town meeting? What are the issues, questions, and concerns that could work against us that we need to be prepared for?
So in Natick, there were, I forget the vote. I think I had it on my slides. It was well in the majority. It was in support, and I think there was only a few people who voted against it. And again, that resolution was not something that I was the public face of. So that was the Sustainability Committee, but really more this organization called Renewable Natick, which is maybe similar to you guys. They're like more of a grassroots organization. And so I didn't see them do a lot of, what they did is they sent a letter. No, actually, I'm going to take that back. They did a lot of community outreach to town meeting members. So in Natick, we're a representative town meeting. So there's 10 precincts, and each precinct can elect 18 people. And they sent like multiple letters to town meeting members explaining the resolution and they hosted a few different like Q&A sessions for people to come to in person. Like they called, I forget what they called them, some kind of party or something like that. They didn't have a lot of turnout at those, but they did offer them. And then on town meeting floor, there was, I think, just 2 people who spoke in debate against the resolution or with a question. One person who said she was voting to support it, but she said that she wanted to ensure that equity was part of any measures that the town considered. And then the other person, he just doesn't believe in climate change, so he commented on that. Or he believes in climate change, but he doesn't believe it's caused by humans. So that was all we really faced.
We have a representative town government also. We actually, Byrne sent out emails to all the town meeting reps, I think yesterday, the day before. I'm wondering if there's any of them here today. I don't know.
Doesn't
Oh,
look like
Rebecca.
it.
I'm a town meeting rep.
Oh, good. Okay.
You would have been here anyway.
Oh, yeah, that's true too, but you know, it did remind me to go sign up.
Good.
Okay. Is there another town rep besides Rebecca?
Diane. I'm a town meeting rep for precinct 9.
Ooh.
Oh, I think
What's your last name?
too, Diane.
The last name is Colucci, C-O-L-U-C-C-I.
Did you enter that into the chat?
I might not have. I sort of was a late entry. I was at my online work, but I received the email, so I'm interested in that.
Well, could you, go to the chat box and enter your name and your organization, and that you're a town meeting member, please?
Oh, sure.
Oh,
Yeah.
good. All right. Good luck.
That would help for our record.
Mhm.
Ooh, thank you for coming.
Yeah, thank you.
I
Wow.
had a question actually. I noticed that Roger Luckman is on, and it says that you're from Natick, and I don't think we've ever met before. Roger, can you hear me? I would be curious to hear how you heard about this, and like if there's any questions you have about Natick.
No, I heard about this because I'm a member of Elders Climate Action, and I received lots of info on environmental events, and I just have joined up with Renewable Natick, and so have been hearing lots about what's been going on, but I never really heard the details about where we're headed. So I intend to continue to be involved as much as possible, and really appreciate all the information you got us today.
Great. Nice meeting you.
Yeah, no, I'll be in touch for sure.
Well, it's good to know we've reached out beyond the borders of Chelmsford also. There's Roger. Great, thanks for coming.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we did have this meeting in the ECA event calendar and on the ECA Facebook page.
So for those who aren't familiar with ECA, I'm not sure if there's very many. It's Elders Climate Action. It's a Massachusetts chapter that we're affiliated with. Tom Byrne, Julie, and I think Rebecca, you're probably involved. And Diana, yes, that's where I know you from.
Yeah.
But, they have
And Roger.
And Roger now, that's right. And it's a great organization to be part of. When I retired, I saw Elders and I thought, hey, that sounds like me now. But they've been very helpful. And we started the work here in Chelmsford as members of ECA. And I think it was our state senator, Barrett, who recommended we start a local group. And I think that's, from that point on, I'm slowly walking into this new territory and learning a lot of things. And I have to admit, I'm hearing a lot more than I'm learning because there's a learning curve for me. I'm not technical at all. Like Diana said earlier, it's hard to keep up with everything. But I think because of my work at the library, I did the research and discovered what Jillian is doing, and then met Melissa, and she was like, yeah, I know Jillian. She's a good friend of mine. So I just feel like, Melissa, you may end up seeing a lot more of us and hearing from us, and maybe we can, I don't know, get us higher on the priority list with your department head and our town manager, and maybe we can get some of these activities going that Jillian's told us about. I know for me, the inventory tool just sounded really exciting. And I thought for the students at the high school who are looking for projects to really get into and get involved in, this would be a fun one, I would think, for the science kids and the math nerds, because they can, use what they learn to write their college essays and impress MIT and all the other schools out there that they want to go to. I'm hoping that that can all come together over time. But I don't know if we have any other questions or closing words. Melissa, we'd love to hear from you.
Yeah, no, I think it's really great, and I think that what Jillian has shared today definitely gives us a little bit of an idea of what is possible. So that's super exciting. I know that I actually have to step out because I have to deal with an HVAC emergency. And I want to thank Jillian for joining us today. I think that she probably needs to step back into her little land at the DPW there. We hear the front end loaders coming by our windows. So we're ever reminded that we have other work to do. Again, Jillian, thank you so much. I am always inspired every time I talk to you. So let's keep the energy up, and I'm happy to hop on with you guys at another time, even if it's before the next meeting. Definitely we can be in touch, but we have to bounce. So I'll let you guys finish up your meeting, and that's what I have for today. So thank you, Jillian.
Okay,
Thanks,
yeah.
Melissa. I miss you.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank
Melissa,
you.
for coming in. And Jillian, thank you
Sure.
so much for spending this time with us. This has really been valuable. It's
Yeah.
got me psyched. I'm ready to go.
Thanks.
So we will let you and Melissa get back before you start hearing banging on your door for your supervisors. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Take care. Good luck.
And we're gonna hang out for a little bit longer because I need to let people know about next month and our next business meeting. And we hope to see some of you again at that. Bern, do you want to talk about the next meeting, the business meeting? I think it's on the 14th.
Yeah, I'll send out a notice about that and some links. This is mostly for the CCAT members to talk about where we go from here. And I'll give a little review of where we've been and as a basis for understanding where we're going to go. And then I hope we can set up some programs and get going. This would be our first really business meeting by itself. So part of the job is going to be, are we going to keep a business meeting separate like this? And if so, when? We recognize that it's on Monday night, and that leaves out our interfacing with the select board and other members probably, but that's something to be discussed. I'll send out a notice about that by tomorrow.
Yeah, because the selectmen meet on Monday nights, and I'm assuming a lot of town reps probably want to keep track of what's going on there.
Yeah.
So
Is it every Monday night?
every other usually.
Every
So we
other,
just have to
okay.
do it in between.
Yeah, if we can figure out what that is. I don't know if with COVID, if the selectmen's schedule has had to switch at all. I don't know, but I think this next one on the 14th, right? That we should go ahead with that, because I think we've got a lot of information from today's program. We may want to juggle around our priorities and actually write some things in stone. But I did want to also let you all know about next month's climate conversation. Julie recommended a person at Mass Audubon trying to find her name now, Alexandra Vecchio. I'm not sure if I'm saying that yet.
Something like that.
She's their climate change director at Mass Audubon. So I wrote to her, and she sent us a list of topics, and then I tried to get input from everyone, and I had to put it in a spreadsheet because everybody had different orders for what they wanted as the first choice. But basically it came down to next month, October 8th, Thursday afternoon at 1, which would be next October's climate conversations. We have Paige Dolce and Risha Narayana from Mass Audubon. And the topic they'll be speaking on is communicating about climate change. And they'll have a specific focus on the value of nature and nature-based solutions to climate change. We thought that would be a helpful one for all of us who are in the business of trying to communicate and talk with folks about climate change. So I'll have more details on that. I'm going to ask them to describe what they're going to cover in that title. And then Alexandra also said that she has a speaker on climate justice. And I think that's an important topic and one that a lot of people don't understand yet. And I think we can all learn from that. She has a speaker lined up named Nia Keith from Mass Audubon. When I surveyed the folks in our core group, I think the consensus was to have it in an evening so we can probably attract people who are working during the day. And so we're working on finding a date. I'm hoping Jessica will get back to me soon. We're looking at maybe a Wednesday or Thursday night later in October. There's really only one date the library had open in November, but that may change. Jessica has her own ability to work magic. So we're hoping to get that talk up in October or November. So I'll let you know. Maybe Bern can send something out on the mailing list when we finalize that. So I think that's all I have to announce. Does anybody else want to give any news or ask any questions? Or
well, I just have a quick question. I guess, did anything ever happen with that library initiative for the end of September that you had sent emails around about 2 weeks ago? I forget what it was called, but it was the Library Coalition of Massachusetts was sponsoring Climate Week or something, and they were offering it, or asking us if we wanted to be involved. And did the Chelmsford Library?
No, I never heard anything back. I told Jeff, who does their publicity, that I'd check and see if we, if anybody was interested in holding a program here, and that didn't come through. And it's kind of late now anyway, but I don't think that's going to happen. I think that the most we could probably do at this point is to put something up on the website, or maybe send something up to the
thing is, I don't really know if anybody's looking at the website. I keep I keep going back to the Independent only because I get it and I'm old fashioned and I read, but I noticed that the most recent week, the Chelmsford Library did have a section, but it had absolutely nothing about events or talks. It doesn't mention climate conversations or anything like that. All it is this list of resources that they have. And again, this is all because of COVID and the fact that they're trying to advertise, all the different resources that people can get online. But I think if you're in touch with the person at the library, could you please ask them if they can try to get notices about our meetings and our climate conversations into the paper? Because how are people going to know about this?
Oh, okay, the climate conversations, they do send that out in their newsletter. And I think this last newsletter had something on it.
Okay, all right, you're right. Okay.
Yeah, it does go out in the library's newsletter to a lot of people. I mean, I'm going to say over 1,000, but
okay. but do they read it? I don't
Well,
always read it.
But
Yeah,
there
I
are
do
a lot
tend
of
to read
people,
through the newspaper, but
there are a lot of people that, do I need this anymore? There are a lot of people that really don't do much with the library, you know. So unless you're in contact with the library and
yeah.
you're looking at it, you're not going to hear about it. Months ago, when we first started Climate Conversation, I did, you know, put a notice into the Sun in the 5-minute read or their upcoming events. And I mean, I guess I should resurrect that. And Luke O'Rourke is the guy for our area. Just getting that notice in the Sun would be, you know, might get some attendees. And if you could get it into the Independent, would that be possible?
Who are you asking me?
Yeah.
I guess I could try. Yeah.
Yeah. Actually, Linda's got her hand up. Maybe she's got some insights.
Just two quick things. I do a little bit on Facebook, and there is a group called Green Chelmsford. So those are obviously people that are interested. I'm a member of. I did post how you could opt up. Thank you for Tom sending me the directions. It's not a very active group. I didn't get any remarks, positive or negative.
Yeah.
But I posted it there. So if someone, goes in and searches, they can find out how to opt up for the electricity in Chelmsford.
Great.
And I also know how to post on the Chelmsford Patch, and that's a free place that you can post events. So if you want me to, I can post on the Chelmsford Patch as well.
That would be wonderful.
Yeah.
That's great.
More places we can get it.
Yeah, we need more
I
people.
think the library posts. I think the library automatically posts our things on Patch, I believe.
I don't know.
Not always.
I get the Patch, and I haven't seen it all the time.
You see it this month? Not this month?
The library posted the next book sale that they're doing, the trunk bag, grab book sale. I saw that there. But I'm away next week, so I won't be around for the next meeting. But I'm going to a cabin in the woods somewhere. Get away.
Nice.
Diana,
sounds good.
I had a question. Do you have something called Next Door Neighbor? We have it's Next Door Neighbor, and it's the community, and people advertise on it and ask questions.
Is that on Facebook or?
Not on Facebook. It's a separate list.
Oh,
I can't hear very well.
It's a separate list. It's called Next Door Neighbor, and I'm not sure who manages it, but it goes by streets and communities, and you can have just your close neighborhood, or you can have the whole town. But that might be a good thing. A lot of the towns have a way of communicating, like she was saying, on a list. So if you look into it, it's pretty good because it covers a lot of things. And I just wanted to say that I've learned a lot from Elder Climate. It's really good because there's so many topics. And I'm on a soil group with Mothers Out Front, and they're trying to get ready to do presentations, and everything it's holistic. Instead of being specialized in one subject, they're talking about soil and how everything goes into the soil, and you can't separate it out anymore. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Wow. Yeah, it's like everything seems interconnected, and
it's all echo consciousness. It's not linear anymore. So in some ways, if we're old enough, that makes sense.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I think one of our issues is that we're a small group, and we're just still kind of forming, and it's hard to get the word out to everybody and all the different places that people look. Julie's been real good about putting articles in the Chelmsford Independent. Well, you know,
Which hasn't been published yet.
but she's working on that. And, you know, and I do the website, but again, it's like, how do we lead people to the website? I'm always hoping that through the library it'll get there. And I noticed not too long ago, the library doesn't have our website on their calendars. So I've asked if they would add that in all our publicity. I think Byrne did a great thing this week by sending the news of this meeting out to the town meeting reps. I was expecting more, but we got 2, so we're getting there. Maybe next time it'll be 4.
I have one other idea. Do you have mothers out front, or
I don't think we have a local group here. I haven't heard of it.
But one thing that came up when we were talking about the equity and social justice, about having allies.
Yes.
You could have ally agencies like the family groups, because the family groups are interested in the environment and safety and health. So you can just, you know, encourage other groups to say, would you let people know, and and go and talk to those groups, because I think there are a lot of groups that would potentially be very, very interested. They just don't know you exist. And
I think that's a great idea.
And I like the idea of ally groups.
Yeah, and I think the churches is another group. I know early on I did send a note to the congregation Shalom, because we know that they are very active in the climate movement, and they've had some, the Senator Barrett was there speaking at their temple. And I've, First Parish Church is another one that I sent a note to, and they announced the formation of our group and our website at one of their services, online services, I heard. So it's going to take a while. I mean, I worked for the library for 30 years, and I'm always stunned when people I meet, even now 30 years later, say, oh, I didn't know you had art shows. I didn't know you exhibited art, or I didn't know you had this program or that program. And, you know, sometimes they'd be running for 15 years and people didn't know about it. So I'm just kind of used to that happening. You know, we're not going to let everybody know the same time, and it doesn't happen fast.
I know. Another one. We act in TV. Do you have a community TV station?
Oh yeah, they've been very helpful. We've actually
interview you and talk about it, and even do like a show. Have a show and have different people of different ages come and talk about their concerns. But that's been very helpful.
Yes, we did do that. We have a couple of 3, I think, episodes that we did with Rick Lent from ECA and in the early days before the pandemic. And we could always go back and do another one, and call it the Chelmsford Climate Action Team and see how it goes. But
at our town meeting, they played a little movie, and it was so wonderful with 3 different people, different ages, talking about it. And it was just a little clip, and it was done by the Acton Town channel, the Town TV. And it really made a difference, because when people went to do the vote, they really knew what they were voting about. And a lot of the other questions at the town meeting, they didn't clarify what we were voting about. And it was one that was important for safety. And it lost it because people didn't know the real project. So being clear and having the information out there, it's hard to start, but you've got a great start. You've already done a lot.
Yeah, I feel like we have done a lot. It's just we're just not. I think right now is a tough time. It's a pandemic, and people who have children are trying to juggle childcare and teaching and all the other things. And I'm just happy that we got as many people as we did today. It's, more. Yeah. What were you going to say, Julie? I'm sorry.
No, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I was probably just muttering to myself. I don't know.
Yeah, but Diane, if you have any comments or suggestions on how we can get more than 2 town reps here next month, I would love to hear.
Well, I definitely appreciate Vern sending that email because I've only been a town meeting rep since April. And this was the only email I've received from a group. We did have some emails from residents when we were talking about acquiring the farm recently. So that was a hot topic, but environmental causes is something I'm very interested in and have dabbled in the past. So I was definitely interested in joining your meeting. As far as reaching out to different organizations, I highly recommend that. I used to be a member of the Chelmsford Mothers Club, and that's a very large organization of moms that have children, usually 0 to 5, a little bit older too. PTAs, you know, if you want to try to run an event at some point in the future in congruency with the schools. You know, small businesses in town. I have a couple of friends who run the Artisans Exchange, and they're very community focused on, you know, the brook that runs behind them. And they had a outdoor fair last year sort of to promote downtown Chelmsford. So, you know, again, reaching out to the senior center, any organizations, churches, schools, that's definitely the way to get your message out. And again, you might find some resources with students being able to access Facebook more and sort of spread that message. I am aware of a couple more Facebook groups. I forget which one of them, but it's something about promoting local events in Chelmsford. And that might be a way to promote your meetings. And it does sound like there's a lot of crossover with different organizations in town. You know, the Elder Climate Action Committee, sustainability, you know, even the community service coordinator with, you know, I've been donating, you know, my produce from my garden to, you know, help members of the community who need that. And that sort of flows into, you know, not throwing that in the trash or let it go to waste. Also, I have a composting service at my home. Offbeat Compost is run by an African-American woman out of Lowell, and you know, she has a great business model, and I'd love to see Chelmsford sort of get on board with that, with bringing that to all residents for, you know, a flat fee. Where was I going with that?
I like that idea.
It's too bad Rebecca has left. She, the recycling committee, that's one of their areas of interest or responsibility.
Yeah, like I said, I think there's a lot of crossover where you can mutually benefit each other. You know, and you talked about what are some of the obstacles that you face in this kind of environment. Money is always going to be an issue for a lot of people. So I enjoyed seeing Jillian's presentation where she sort of justified the cost of her salary and the capital expenses versus the monetary benefit that Natick is reaping from having these programs in place and receiving these grants and implementing these different initiatives. So I think, you know, whenever you do something, having the money aspect laid out in terms of the net positives is going to be key, because that's what I'm finding on, especially at town meeting rep, you know, money is going to be the driver, especially due to this pandemic and the costs that are going to be associated with it for a very long time going forward. And a lot of citizens losing their jobs and being furloughed and, you know, having economic issues. You know, money is going to be a central issue regarding anything new that gets brought up in the town and sort of trying to get off the ground. So
that's why, excuse me, this is Nyana. That's why when you show that you're saving money and making revenue, there's a real positive side to that.
Right. So just going back to, you know, the sustainability, you know, taking trash out of our waste stream, because, you know, our waste costs for town are going up because everybody is home. Well, if you have the textile recyclings and you have composting efforts. You're going to reduce that on a dollar basis. No, guess what? You have less trucks going through town for trash pickups, a less back and forth to the transfer station to empty their load and then to come back into town. So, like I said, all this gels together. Everything is linked.
So I just discovered Chelmsford because I went to the bead shop, and now I'm interested in seeing the artisans group that's down in Chelmsford Center.
Yep, they have a great little store. They're going to be opening up a coffee shop within it too. So a lot of different local artisans have their wares displayed. So
I'm excited to go there. But whenever there's a festival or something, and having a table, or even having a poster, in the artisans' place.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah,
you could have a contest of school kids making posters to talk about environment, and it's not always, instead of saying don't walk on the grass, how can they say positive? It's fun.
Yeah, no, that's a good idea. I've actually been to the artisans. Is it Artisans Exchange? Artisans
Exchange, yeah.
Exchange, yeah, they do a nice job, and I'm glad that they're still there because there's a lot of places that didn't make it through the pandemic. So,
Is this the one that's right near the bead shop?
Yes, it's on the road. It's a little building all by itself, and it has a really cool history. If you go out and back, there's some things about the old mill house, and inside. They have a beautiful mural by an artist from Lowell, Janet Lambert Moore, I think is her name. It's a mural that she painted on the wall of the old Chelmsford Center with some of the historic buildings. And yeah, it's a nice place. I used to use it as a bakery when I was very young. It was a bakery, and I can remember going in there, and the two little ladies that worked there made the best sticky buns and pecan rolls, I guess, that I've ever had. That's kind of the standard now. I don't reach it too often. But yeah, I know we have a lot of work to do to get the word out, but I've heard some great suggestions. I love the idea of going to the mothers group and some of the other groups. There's a new one on Facebook. It's standing up for racial justice, or I'm not sure the name of it, but I mean, especially with our program that's coming in October, when we get the dates, I'll send a note to them and let them know about it. And I just saw a really interesting video that my cousin who lives in Tennessee put out on using plastic bags that, we had the students came into town meeting and got the ban on the plastic bags, and then we had the pandemic, and that just turned upside down, and that's all the grocery stores are giving out now, plastic bags. But the video is on taking those bags, and if you cut strips of it, you actually turn it into what they call plarn, and with that plarn you can create mats. And I guess
I think you can knit it. You can knit it and crochet it.
Crochet it, yes. And you get balls of yarn and turn it into mats. And I guess in places across the country, they're giving these, crocheted mats to the homeless. At least they have something in between them and the ground. I just think there's got to be more effective ways of helping the homeless. But for lack of this, that right now, this works, I would think, kind of nice. I could see taking it on a camping trip, but they've got these 6 feet by 3 feet mats made out of plastic bags. It really, they look kind of cool. They really do.
There's a new word. What's the new word? It's not recycling, it's upcycling.
Upcycling, yes.
Yeah.
So
one thing about the justice programs, I went to a program 2 years ago about bystander training, how you stand up if somebody's being harassed and what you can do.
Yes.
That's polite and you're not going to get hurt. Well, I was embarrassed that I had never thought of that. Nobody had ever talked about that in my culture. And I grew up just in this white community. And I was embarrassed that I had never thought of being an upstander. And I'll see something and I'll walk away, or I'll be embarrassed, or I'll be angry, but I had never done anything. And it was just real practical things to do. Just to go up to the person and say hi and pretend you know them. And stuff that I was embarrassed I didn't know.
You know, we weren't encouraged to speak our minds when we were younger, at least in my generation and here in little Chelmsford. But we were always taught that you were better to, what was it? Don't say anything bad about people. Always it's good, and you know, little voice. Oh, I forget what the phrases were now, but it's probably a good thing I've forgotten them, so I don't use them. But so any other words? Because I know it's getting late. It's almost 3 o'clock.
I think I've reached my limit. There's been a lot of really good information and ideas, but I don't think I can take any more in right now. So I need to
get out of here.
I need to be able to go back and think about it.
Yeah, I know. I think we all need a cup of.
Don't kill the meeting until I save the chat file, just in case.
Yes, you want to get everything off of that.
So I guess I can save it right now because it's not gonna.
Yeah, go ahead.
Chat.
We need
Thank
to.
you so much. You're gonna flourish. It's wonderful because it's just everybody's important and concerned about what's happening. So to be in the forefront is great.
Yeah. Boy,
Take care,
everyone. Good to see you.
Nice meeting you.
Yeah, we'll see you again, I hope. And Diane, thanks for joining us, and bring the word back to your fellow reps when you see them.
I will.
When's our next
so
town
much.
meeting?
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Bye-bye. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye, everybody. See you soon. Tom, did you get the chat?
Yeah, I'll email it out.
Okay. And I
Okay,
hope
I guess.
some good
Thank
meeting
you.
notes.
Good job, Kath.
Okay, talk to you soon. Have a great day. See you on the 14th. Okay. And okay. Yeah. End meeting.